So lately I made this little beat loop. And I made something on the bass line that I want to show you today because it's a little bit different than what I usually do. So here's the bass line. Pretty simple, pretty subby, pretty smooth. Actually a little bit too smooth. If you listen to this in the context of the music now, I deactivated something. That's just too clean. And my idea was I would like to have some sort of sizzle in there that kinda reacts to one of the other sounds in the beat, kinda makes it melt together, maybe with a pad. So I remembered that I once made a plugin which is called Absorb, and to be honest, I haven't used this plugin a lot since I released it. The initial inspiration came from a song by Billie Eilish in which there is one moment where there is a really deep sub bass, and it sounded just like the thing that you hear when you clip a full song entirely, because then the bass line and the vocals melt together and distort in a way that they wouldn't do if they were just being distorted by themselves. And upon further inspection, I noticed that this is basically just like multiplying two signals with each other, basically sidechain ring modulation. That's why I made Absorb, and you can dial in the volume of the ring modulation between the currently selected sidechain input and the main signal. So here we can now select the output from the Wonder pad and dial in ring modulation. So that's what it sounds like. Now we can hear the pad kind of being melted into the bass line. And if we now unsoloed the pad, we would still hear the pad just on the bass line somewhat. And I added 4 more algorithms. You just have to feel into them. So then you kind of adjust them, find the sound that you like, and that's the workflow that is intended by Absorb. Now we have sort of a gritty little thing with a little bit of high end even. What I did then was I made a layer and I have thrown Absorb into it so that I have a dry signal and a distorted signal, and I can balance them. Unfortunately, in my plugin I decided for just a mix knob and not a dry and wet output gain. Would have made more sense for a plugin like this where it's a lot about feeling into the different gain stages. But okay, I didn't do that. So let's just use the FX layer for now. Now that sounds pretty cool, but it could be a little bit busy in the context of the full music, if you know what I mean. So my next idea was that I could use some sort of method to kind of soften up the sound, especially in the high end. But I didn't want to use a low pass filter because that again makes it too clean. So what I did then was I added Sloth, which is a slew limiter plugin, which lets you set up individual slew limiters for when the waveform's going up and down. And also you can change the shape. I have no idea how exactly I should use that, but I always use it by feeling. So let's see. You can also experiment with the sequence. So if you put it before Absorb, it sounds like this. So then you would still keep a lot of the high end. So let's remove this layer again and activate the other one where I already tweaked everything. Here apparently I chose to put Sloth before Absorb. Let's see. Yeah, I went for a bit of a different sound here. Yeah, so we can hear a little bit of shiny grit in the background, and it especially makes sense in the context of the full beat. I really like that because it adds a little bit of this aesthetic that music has when you clip it too hard, which is a valuable aesthetic because it reminds us of the beginnings of the naive and pure raw emotions that you had when you mixed your first music ever. And a lot of music is based on that aesthetic as well, because it kind of becomes nostalgic at some point to a large amount of people that you can let something sound like that. But it's not quite the same as distorting the entire master hard, since a lot of elements are still entirely clean. So you just get a little bit of this vibe without, let's say, ruining the whole mix, which is pretty cool. You can be selective about it. A little bit of a similar sensation than deliberately clipping something, not to reduce peak levels but for the sound of clipping. And I think this combination of Sloth and Absorb just works wonders, because Absorb can be used to just shape the general character of the distortion, and Sloth can then be used to soften it up in a rather subtle way but without losing the grit from the sound. Yeah, that's what I wanted to make a video about. See you next time.